I don't want to ride a tandem bike. Well, you don't need a psychoblast just to go teach kindergarten. What, are you going to bonk out getting the kids to line up single file? She folded away her magazine and took another bite. Her bike was a... Oh, he pressed closer. When was the last time you rode your bike anyway? Her bike was a Schwinn 3-speed she bought at a yard sale for $30 and had owned since high school. It had wide, white-walled tires and a seat commodious enough for a rider twice her girth. Before they met, she had loved riding it around the lakefront, from Oak Street Beach near where she worked to her condo in Lakeview, stopping at cafes in Lincoln Park for espressos and bran scones, where she would invariably meet friends from work or maybe even one of the hundreds of her pals from college, all of whom seemed to be living within a pleasant bike ride's distance. She hadn't even needed a car the first couple of years after graduating because she was never that far from the Red Line. Back then, before marriage, she could walk into any tiny Thai place or narrow Indian buffet, sushi at the Tokyo Marina, margaritas at El Jardín, and be pretty much guaranteed to know a handful of other people, men and women near her age, also taking leisurely breaks from jobs at nonprofits and environmentals, young adults who shared basic political assumptions and the same taste in movie stars. This was being young and single in this city, the dusky lights of Clark and Belmont on her fat tire bike, waving to friends, drinking against whale-sized windows under old-style signs. She never locked her bike in those days, partly from a feeling that having her bike stolen was just something that couldn't happen to her. I'd rather be mugged than live in fear, she told more than a few friends more than a few times. She was also fairly certain she would lose the key or forget the combination anyway. She'd been married now 14 years, hadn't taken a bike ride in 10, but still had the thing in the garage hanging next to his expensive carbon bike, a dusty youth waiting to be reclaimed, but just for an hour or two. The tandem will also mark a fresh start for both of us, he continued. I've never ridden one, and as far as I know, you never have either. I never have, as far as I know. Despite himself, he was hungry, and he fished out the last psychoblast from the box. I suppose I would be the back rider, she sighed. The stoker, Natch, but we'll switch sometimes, and you can captain. Not at first, but after you get some, experience. Do I ever get to steer? From the back? He used his tongue to pry some of the thick slush from a molar. She creased her magazine at the picture of the yoga pose she was thinking about trying. Okay, I'm game. Might even be fun. But I just don't like the feeling that you're making me ride the tandem as some sort of penance for perceived crimes that you think I've committed. You know what you did, he growled, but waved his hands to keep the conversation from slipping into that particular rut. The tandem is for both of us, he said quickly, so we can start all over, clean slate the whole Michigas, burn new memories, like Dr. Shiraz says. There aren't any bad old memories. You need to stop talking like that. He took a deep breath. Anyway, it's not just you that needs penance. I have something I should tell you about. I met a woman on the brace. She stared at him. He took another nibble of his bar and drummed his fingers on the table before continuing. This gal was older than me, and she had a bike map holder from REI velcroed to her handlebars, the kind you sometimes see with the Shimano gear shifters. She shrugged cautiously. You know. Anyway, it's sort of attached to her Trek mileage computer, and she and I managed to get lost briefly while coming into town. Gunnison, which was sort of a college town, not like Hotchkiss or Buena Vista, which they're both pretty small and not hard to navigate in. But we got to base camp late, and it was too dark for both of us to set up our tents, so we just both pitched hers, me helping her, being gallant and gentlemanly, and we drank a lot of beer at the garden, kind of in a celebration. Remember I texted you about the New Belgium Brewery being a kind of sponsor? The lady bought my beer, and then she said I could crash in her teepee since we didn't set up mine, and it was getting cold, so I moved closer together to generate some heat. This was on the high school football field, and she took off her clothes, and she said I should do the same to generate even more heat. She had a pretty good body, too, for an older lady. Did this really happen? Absolutely. What sort of question is that? Well, I don't know. I know that you have that older lady thing, so it seems a sort of convenient detail. I'm sorry if this is hurting you. Also, you said it was too dark to see, so I don't know how you all of a sudden can tell she had the nice body. I could tell from earlier, from the way her Pearl Izumi bike pants fit. Anyway, all long-time bike riders have nice... And the thing about generating heat reminds me of that MASH episode with Hawkeye and Hotless. And we both know how nuts you are for MASH. Why would I make this up? I'm confessing something terrible. You want to hurt me. You were hurt, and whether you should or should not have been hurt is no longer the issue, I understand. You were hurt, and you're still trying to hurt me. No, that's me before. I'm different now since coming down Monarch. And anyway, even if I am making this up, what difference does it make? Isn't just thinking it bad enough? Thinking what? We had sex, me and the lady. I was cheating on you during the sexual encounter. It was wild, too. Well, not that wild, maybe. Actually, pretty standard stuff. But we had our bike helmets on, which is at least sort of novel. Oh. And we did it 2 times in the same night. He leaned back in his chair to let that settle for a moment. Weren't you tired from all the bike riding? He snorted. Not that tired. Did this happen before or after the Monarch Pass ride? Scoozy? Did you have sex in your bike helmet with a shapely older lady like on MASH before or after your epiphany? What difference does it make? He began fiddling with the salt shaker, tapping it a few times, trying to turn the bass like a top. Before, I think. You know, when you're on a trip like that, all the days tend to blur. But I already told you it happened in Gunnison, and that was before Monarch. The night before, in fact. I'm sorry if you feel devastated by this. I would be devastated if I believed it, which I don't. I think your epiphanic moment didn't have as much lasting effect as you thought it would. But before you say anything else, I take the point that this is important to you. That's all you needed to say, that it's important. I'll try a tandem. Let's rent one and go around the subdivision. Could be fun. Sure, you'll want your own bike in no time. You'll probably even want to be on next year's bike ride across Colorado's environs with me. Don't register me for the brace just yet. I'm just trying it out. Don't get me any gear until I see how I like it. No jerseys or pants, and for God's sake, don't buy me a livestock bracelet. Live strong. Wait, don't tell me you're against curing cancer, too. All right. The bike arrived at the shop several days later, and they went to be fitted. The technicians lowering her seat, raising the stoker pedals, adding bottle cages to the frames, pushing the captain's handlebars forward a few centimeters. By the time he was disassembling the frame so it would fit on his Yakima hitch, she understood they were buying it and not renting, but the process had gone on far too long for her to say anything, which is why the morning of the first ride, when he laid out her new bike pants, fresh jersey, shoes with clips on the bottom, and a new helmet, she was determined to be a good sport in the spirit of shared endeavor. They dressed in silence, naked by the dim of the closet. She tugged at the bike pants, hadn't worn anything so tight since high school. She had to admit that the biking had changed him, and not all for the worse. Physically, he was better off, a good 20 pounds lighter, plus he no longer wheezed during sex, although it hadn't done anything for the sweating, which tended to make him as moist as seaweed, turning their connubial bed into a damp ecosystem before it was over. By the time he got the water bottles filled and caged, checked pressure in the tubes, retopped the Presta valves with Schrader converters, the sun was just beginning to rise, bleeding purple slashes into the morning sky. Are you sure that these pants are the right size? She slapped herself idly to keep warm. It feels like I'm wearing a diaper. He had already told her she would feel differently in the saddle, but didn't see any need to repeat himself. He made sure their bike helmets were secure but not constricting, and then, after giving a few swings of his hip to loosen everything up, he rolled the bike on the lip of the driveway just to the edge of the lawn. I dub thee, he officiously patted the seat with his gloved hand, Fresh Start. This was the name she had negotiated, having objected to his first suggestion, Penance, as being a clear attack on her, and his second idea, Peacemaker, as being too loaded and backward-looking. He thought her first ideas, Dream Horizon and Tomorrow's Treat, corny, and more suited for a racehorse, but agreed Fresh Start caught something in the spirit of what he was after. Throwing his leg over the seat, he situated his rump and gave his fingers a flashy wiggle before leaning low toward the handlebar. Just as he was about to plant the balls of his shoes and stabilize the bike, the frame began jerking back and forth. Whoa, whoa, what are you? His arms stiffened to keep from upending. But against his effort, the bike suddenly lurched right, and he was face down on the dewy grass. Bicycle pressed heavily upon him. Oopsie, she said, sorry. You need to tell me what you're going to do before you do it. He picked up the bike and ran his fingertips over the cables to make sure nothing had been damaged. It's okay. We had to have our first spill at some point. He gave his best confidence-building captain smile. This time they threw their legs over in unison, and when they were both ready, he took a step forward like a cross-country skier, the two of them rising to meet their saddles like forward pistons. They got down to the edge of the driveway, and he began a leeward maneuver into the empty street. The bow of the bike took the turn with a pleasing, graceful glide, but suddenly the stern felt sluggish and weighty. Being clipped in meant abandoning ship was out of the question, and bracing, they pitched onto the pavement before it even occurred to him to call out a warning. Damn it, she said. It's okay, he told her. We had to have our second spill at. It's starting to hurt now. She brushed gravel from her arms. Anything worth doing well will hurt when done wrong, he nodded, pleased. I just made that up, or possibly adapted it from the sort of thing written on inspirational posters. Either way, I believe it. Do I have to stay clipped into that thing? She slapped the side of her own helmet in frustration.